May 2nd, 1986. A remote mountain in Corsica. Henri Toivonen's Lancia Delta S4 approaches a sharp left turn at speeds that defy reason. The 500-power beast, a car with more advanced technology than fighter jets of its time, suddenly veers off course. In an instant, it plummets down a ravine and erupts into flames. No one witnesses the moment of impact. By the time the rescuers arrive, the inferno has consumed everything. The most dangerous era in motorsports history had just claimed its final victims. For 5 brief chaotic years, motorsport lost its mind. Engineers built machines too powerful to control. Officials created courses too dangerous to race. And drivers pushed limits too extreme for human reflexes. They called it Group B, the deadliest, fastest, most technical arms race ever witnessed in racing. To understand how motorsport reached this breaking point, we need to go back to 1982. Rally racing had always been the grittier, more accessible cousin to the glamour of Formula One. It was racing for the people, production cars modified for competition, racing on real roads rather than purpose-built circuits. But by the late 1970s, the sport had stagnated. The existing Group 4 and Group 5 regulations had become a technical straitjacket, limiting innovation and keeping manufacturers confined to outdated designs. The governing body of rallying, the FIA, saw an opportunity. What if they created a new category? One with minimal restrictions, allowing manufacturers to push the boundaries of what was possible. The result was Group B, and its regulations could fit on a single sheet of paper. The rules were deceptively simple. Manufacturers needed to produce just 200 road-going versions of their rally cars. The weight was unrestricted. The materials were unrestricted. The power was unrestricted. The only significant limitation was that the cars had to somewhat resemble production vehicles in their silhouette. It was the closest thing to technical anarchy ever sanctioned in motorsport. What the FIA failed to anticipate was just how far and how quickly manufacturers would push these liberal regulations. They had unwittingly triggered an arms race that would escalate beyond anyone's imagination. The first wave of Group B cars arrived for the 1983 season. The Lancia 037 Rally and the Audi Quattro were evolutionary rather than revolutionary. Powerful machines, but still recognizably connected to their road-going counterparts. The Audi Quattro, in particular, had already established itself with its groundbreaking all-wheel drive system. In the snow and mud of rally stages, the traction advantage was undeniable. But this was just the beginning. The engineering laboratories of Europe's major manufacturers were already working on machines that would redefine what a rally car could be. For the first time, rally wasn't just a marketing exercise to sell family cars. It had become a technological battleground where automotive giants would deploy their most advanced engineering resources in pursuit of victory. By 1984, the true Group B monsters had arrived. Audi's response to growing competition was the Sport Quattro, a shortened, more aggressive evolution of their earlier car with power now approaching 450 horsepower. But the car that changed everything came from an unlikely source. Peugeot, better known for practical family vehicles, unveiled their 205 T16, a car that only shared its headlights and general shape with the compact hatchback it was supposedly based on. The 205 T16 was Group B's first purpose-built rally weapon. The engine was moved from the front to the middle. The transmission connected to all 4 wheels. The body panels were made of lightweight composites. Even the space frame chassis had more in common with race cars than road cars. This wasn't adaptation. It was transformation. Rally cars were no longer modified production vehicles. They were barely disguised prototypes with production vehicle costumes. Peugeot's approach worked. The 205 T16 dominated the 1985 season, forcing other manufacturers to accelerate their development programs even further. Ford responded with the RS200, a mid-engine, all-wheel drive monster designed from a clean sheet with a single purpose: to beat Peugeot. Its composite body concealed a space frame chassis capable of handling more than 600 horsepower in its ultimate form. Lancia, realizing their rear-wheel drive 037 was now hopelessly outclassed, created the Delta S4, a technological tour de force featuring both a supercharger for low-end torque and a turbocharger for high-end power. This twin charging system created a car that could generate brutal acceleration at any speed in any gear. Even Austin Rover, a British manufacturer known primarily for conservative sedans, entered the fray with the extraordinary Metro 6R4, a tiny car with a naturally aspirated V6 engine producing a screaming 410 horsepower. The power figures during this period tell a story better than words can. 1982, 300 horsepower. 1983, 350 horsepower. 1984, 450 horsepower. 1985, 500 horsepower. 1986, 600 plus horsepower. In just 4 years, the power output had doubled. For context, modern WRC cars, considered extremely fast and challenging, are limited to 380 horsepower. But these numbers only tell part of the story. The lightweight construction of Group B cars meant their power-to-weight ratios were approaching those of contemporary Formula One cars. The difference? Formula One cars raced on smooth, purpose-built circuits with extensive runoff areas. Group B cars raced on narrow dirt tracks, often with sheer drops on one side and rock faces on the other. And unlike Formula One, which had long banned spectators from standing alongside the track, Group B races drew crowds that stood just inches from the racing line. Sometimes they would only jump away at the last possible moment, creating a human slalom course for drivers already operating at the very edge of control. This combination, astronomical power increases, cutting-edge but proven technology, treacherous road conditions, and virtually non-existent crowd control, was creating a scenario where disaster wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The warning signs appeared early, but in the frenzy of competition, they went unheeded. As early as 1984, drivers were voicing concerns. Walter Roll, one of the era's greatest talents, famously described the Audi Sport Quattro as dancing with the devil. Henri admitted he would sometimes close his eyes on straights because the acceleration was so violent, it frightened him. These weren't amateur drivers. They were the best rally drivers in the world, and they were terrified of their own machines. The first major incident came at the Rally of Portugal in 1985. Portuguese driver Joaquim Santos lost control of his Ford RS200 and plowed into a crowd of spectators who were standing directly on the edge of the course. 3 people died instantly. 30 more were injured. Top drivers, including Ari Vatanen, Walter Rühl, and Marco Allen, immediately withdrew from the event in protest of the dangerous conditions. But the rally continued. Despite the tragedy in Portugal, the development pace didn't slow down. If anything, it accelerated. By the 1986 season, Group B had reached its zenith. The Lancia Delta S4 was now generating over 550 horsepower in a package weighing less than 2,000 pounds. The Audi Sport Quattro S1 E2, with its massive wings and aerodynamic devices, could generate 600 horsepower in short bursts using a primitive form of overboost. Ford's RS200 Evolution was reportedly capable of reaching 60 miles per hour in just 2.3 seconds on gravel. If true, this would make it quicker than any modern Formula One car, and this was achieved with 1980s tire technology on unpaved surfaces. But the speed came at a cost. Early in the 1986 season, at the Rally of Portugal, another Ford R200 crashed. This time it was the car of local hero Joaquim Santos. 3 spectators died and more than 30 were injured. The factory teams once again withdrew in protest. Just weeks later, at the Tour de Corse in Corsica, a privateer Lancia 037 went off the road, killing the driver and co-driver. The event continued. The message from the governing body was clear. The show must go on. The popularity of Group B was at its peak. Television coverage had expanded dramatically. Spectator numbers were reaching unprecedented levels. The FIA seemed unwilling to intervene despite the mounting human cost. The drivers were caught in an impossible situation. Their competitive instincts drove them to push these mechanical monsters to the absolute limit. Their survival instincts told them they were dancing closer and closer to disaster. For Henri Toivonen, one of the most naturally gifted drivers of his generation, that disaster was just around the corner. May 2nd, 1986, the Tour de Corse rally, nicknamed the Rally of 10,000 Corners, was living up to its reputation. Henri Toivonen was leading the event in his Lancia Delta S4. Despite feeling ill that day, he was displaying the raw talent that had made him one of the rally's brightest stars. His Lancia was a technological marvel, a carbon fiber and Kevlar shell wrapped around a space frame chassis, powered by the revolutionary twin-charged engine. At 1:30 p.m., Toivonen and his co-driver Sergio Cresto began the Corte Taverna stage. They never finished it. At a sharp left-hand corner near the village of Corte, Toivonen's Lancia left the road, plummeted down a ravine, and hit the trees. The magnesium components in the car ignited immediately. The fire was so intense that by the time rescue crews arrived, the Lancia had been reduced to a blackened chassis. Toivonen and Cresto, trapped inside, had no chance of escape. The exact cause of the crash remains unknown. There were no witnesses, no footage, no survivors. Some speculate that Toivonen, already feeling unwell, may have suffered from exhaustion or even inhaled fumes from the engine compartment, which was separated from the cockpit by only a thin firewall. Others suggest a mechanical failure, perhaps a suspension component breaking under the enormous stresses these cars endured, or a steering column failure. We will never know for certain. What we do know is that the crash finally forced the FIA to act. Just hours after Toivonen's death, FIA President Jean-Marie Ballester announced Group B cars don't belong on this planet, they are too fast. 13 days later, the FIA announced that Group B would be banned from the World Rally Championship at the end of the 1986 season. The decision sent shockwaves through the motorsport world. Manufacturers had invested millions in developing these technological marvels. Some, like Ford with their RS200 and MG with the Metro 6R4, had barely had a chance to race their cars in the championship. Proposed Group S prototypes, the even more advanced successors to Group B, were abandoned overnight. Lancia's ECV, Audi's Group S prototype, and Toyota's MR2-based Group S car would never turn a wheel in competition. In less than 5 years, Group B had risen from a simple regulation change to the pinnacle of motorsport technology, and in one tragic afternoon in Corsica, it had effectively ended. In the aftermath of Group B's cancellation, rally racing took a dramatic step backward in terms of pure performance. The replacement category, Group A, required manufacturers to provide 5,000 road cars instead of just 200, effectively ending the era of thinly disguised prototypes. Power was roughly halved, with most Group A cars producing between 300 and 340 horsepower. For drivers who had experienced the Group B monsters, it was like going from a fighter jet back to a propeller plane. Walter Roll described driving Group A cars after Group B as like driving in slow motion. Yet, even with this dramatic reduction in performance, rally racing continued to thrive. Manufacturers adapted to the new regulations, and the sport gradually rebuilt its reputation, placing a greater emphasis on safety for both competitors and spectators. But the legacy of Group B lives on, burned into the collective memory of motorsport like no other era. The cars themselves have achieved mythical status. Those few remaining examples, the Audi Sport Quattros, Peugeot 205 T16s, Lancia Delta S4s, and Ford RS200s, now command prices in the millions. They've transcended being mere automobiles to become automotive holy grails, the physical embodiments of an era when engineers and drivers pushed beyond reasonable limits. The grainy, smoke-filled footage of these cars sliding through forests, spitting flames, and launching over jumps continues to captivate new generations of fans who were born long after Group B's demise. YouTube compilations of Group B action routinely rack up millions of views. Why does this brief, tragic era continue to fascinate us? Perhaps it's because Group B represents something we'll never see again in motorsport: unfettered technological development with minimal concern for safety or cost. It was the last time race cars were truly dangerous machines, required to make no compromises for safety regulations or environmental concerns. Or perhaps it's because Group B embodied both the best and worst of human nature. Our relentless drive to go faster, push harder, and break boundaries, coupled with our tendency to ignore warning signs until disaster strikes. In today's world of carefully managed risk and corporate caution, there's something undeniably compelling about an era where the fastest car simply won, regardless of the consequences. The human cost of Group B cannot be forgotten. In addition to Henri Toivonen and Sergio Cresto, several spectators lost their lives. Dozens more were injured, some permanently. For the families affected, Group B isn't an exciting YouTube clip or nostalgic memory. It's a permanent loss. Modern rally cars are faster around a complete stage than Group B machines ever were. They achieve this through sophisticated suspensions, advanced aerodynamics, and electronic systems that would have seemed like science fiction in 1986. But they do it with roughly half the horsepower, comprehensive safety systems, and under strict regulations designed to protect both the drivers and spectators. The lesson of Group B wasn't that we shouldn't push boundaries. It was that those boundaries must be pushed methodically, with safety evolving in parallel performance. Group B, in its brief, fiery existence, forced motorsport to confront an uncomfortable truth. There is such a thing as too fast, too soon. Sometimes progress must be measured not just by stopwatches, but by the human ability to control the machines we create. The wildest era in motorsport history lasted just 1,447 days. But its impact will be felt forever. When manufacturers submitted their Group B homologen specials to the FIA in 1982, no one could have predicted how quickly things would escalate, or how abruptly they would end. In the quiet museums where these mechanical beasts now rest, it's easy to forget just how violent they were in motion. The carbon fiber now sits still. The turbochargers no longer scream. The flames no longer shoot from exhausts. But these machines changed motorsport forever, not just through their technological innovations, but through the hard lessons learned from their existence. Next time you see a modern rally car dancing through a forest with spectators safely positioned behind barriers, remember that this order emerged from chaos. This safety was purchased at the highest possible price. Somewhere in the forests of Finland, the mountains of Corsica, the valleys of Wales, the echoes of Group B still resonate. A brief moment when motorsport pushed beyond the limits of what was possible, what was reasonable, and ultimately what was survivable. The question isn't whether we could create Group B cars again. With modern technology, we certainly could, and they would be even faster. The question is whether we should. What would you sacrifice for speed?